The last 3 years of my life have been the toughest I've ever experienced. I had this little parasite called Giardia, just a mean bugger, and it totally took me out. It got me down to 120 pounds. I couldn't absorb food. Got to the point to where I thought I was dying, thought my system was completely shutting down. So here's that story of what I went through, and before we get into it, a message from today's sponsor. Want to say thank you to Skillshare, today's sponsor for this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring and creative classes for anyone who loves learning. Invest in yourself and your personal growth. I've been using Skillshare now for about 2 years, and what initially drew me to the platform is the fact they have so many classes on how to edit videos in Final Cut Pro, and that's the software program that I use to make videos on YouTube. The current class I'm taking is called Masking Transitions in Final Cut Pro that make your videography stand out. So be on the lookout at the end of this segment for a cool little transition, because I got something coming for you. One of the things that I really enjoy about Skillshare is I can log on anytime I want and learn at my own pace. And so all the classes are broken down in these easy to follow segments. They're not long. You can pop in, learn what you need to do, pop out, get your work done. The first 1,000 of my subscribers that click the link in the video description box below will get 1 month free trial to Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. Thank you again to Skillshare, and now back to our video. So this Giardia infection that I've been going through for the past 3 years has been by far the most difficult physical health thing I've ever had in my entire life. It took me from a healthy 180 pounds down to 120 pounds. I could barely walk when it was at its worst point, which was roughly September of 2020. It's taken me a year and a half just to be able to put back on weight, and the reason for that is my small intestine and large intestine got destroyed with all of the parasites boring into the intestinal wall of my GI tract. And so just to give everybody a heads up as to what Giardia is, I'm on the website for the Mayo Clinic right now. I'm just going to read this so that way it's just verbatim. So Giardia infection is an intestinal infection marked by stomach cramps, bloating, nausea, and bouts of watery diarrhea. Giardia infection is caused by a microscopic parasite that is found worldwide, especially in areas of poor sanitation or unsafe water. So what happened to me is that I ended up having a water purifier that I was using. It was the MSR Guardian, which is a fantastic water purifier, but I didn't realize it was cracked on the side. And so the cylinder, from the top, you have this water that comes in to the top part, and it goes through a pump, and then it goes through a filter. Well, at the bottom part of that filter there, where the cylinder comes down, there was a crack in it. So what I think was happening is that water was coming in on the bottom part there and not getting all the way through the filter, and then going through the exhaust valve on there, you know, into my water container, and that's how I got sick. Now, prior to this, I was starting to lose a little bit of weight, and I think some of that was just due to irregular diet. I wasn't taking the best care of myself on the road as far as eating consistently. I'd go out and hike and hike and hike and maybe like skip lunch or skip dinner or, you know, skip breakfast or something like that. And with leading the lifestyle to where you're on the road and backpacking constantly like I was, you know, you can't skip out on meals. I mean, it catches up with you real quick. And same with hydration too. You got to stay on top of your hydration. And so before I got the Giardia, a little bit of issues with stuff, but I was holding good at like 175. And then I got the Giardia, and I noticed something had changed in my system, but I couldn't tell what it was. And I didn't have the watery bouts of diarrhea. That was the weird thing. Was that every once in a while it would come and go, but for me it was more just insane abdominal cramping, and it would feel like there was something in my system that would go back and forth in my stomach. It felt like there was a wave in my stomach constantly, like a real slow wave, and I don't know what that was. But over the course of, gosh, I'd say April of 2020 is when I really started to notice that things didn't feel well in my system. And I'd be out on hikes, I'm like, man, my stomach just hurts like crazy, and it just wouldn't stop. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and it hurt like crazy. And so I didn't know what was going on, and then I started getting weird sensitivities to food, like bread, red meat. I couldn't eat red meat anymore, and I love steak and things like that, but I couldn't eat red meat. You couldn't drink any alcohol whatsoever. If you did, your stomach would violently react. And if I did have any of that stuff, what would happen is my stomach, I could watch it from one side, from my right side to the left, it would just look like it would start popping up. Then it would swell. And so my GI tract was swollen like crazy, and I'm like, what in the world's going on? And it just kept getting worse and worse. I was changing up diets, trying to see if my food intake was way off. I did go through a parasitic cleanse, which I thought would take care of any parasites that I had, but apparently it didn't knock it out. I mean, obviously it didn't. Finally, throughout the summer of going hiking and just looking in the mirror and just being like, man, I'm emaciated. Like, my skin was all tight around my neck, and my neck was real slender, and you could see all the muscles in my neck that was real tight, and then you could see my esophagus and stuff, and my lymph nodes were swollen like crazy. And I was like, there is something wrong with me. And so at the end of the summer, and like in August, I decided I'm gonna go see the doctors. And so in Leadville, Colorado, I went to the ER. And unfortunately, those doctors, I don't know what the problem is, but they thought, at the end of it, I was wondering, I was going through all these tests when I was there. I went through like a CT scan and like a stomach scan, all these different things that were super expensive. And they're like, well, you don't have a burst appendix. And I'm thinking, yeah, no shit. Like, I've been dealing with these, like burst appendix, you get those symptoms immediately and you're down for the count. I was like, I've been dealing with this for months, and I told you that. And I was confused when I looked there. I'm like, oh no, burst appendix. He's like, we don't know what's wrong with you. You make an appointment with the GI specialist down in Salida. And I called down there. It was a 3-month wait, which I was like, I don't have 3 months to wait. So anyway, left there. They still tried to bill me, and I never did pay it because I'm not going to pay for bad health care. And anyway, I left there just feeling horrible, and I actually went to my friend Rick's place right after that, and I just bawled my brains out. Like, I was so disheartened. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Those doctors were like, all right, we can't tell what's wrong with you. We've run all the tests. You don't have any infections. Everything's fine with your GI tract. And I had Giardia really bad, but they just missed it. And what's frustrating about that is I told them that I had a water purifier that I used. And at the time, I didn't know that it was cracked. I noticed after it was cracked. But I was like, hey, I use a water purifier for all my stuff, and I purify my water 100% out of these streams out of here. And he must not have paid attention. I must not have heard it or something. But anyway, so a couple months later, I'm traveling down to Arizona, and I am as sick as I've been. Like, I'm 120 pounds. I can hardly walk around my truck without losing my breath. I cannot go on any hikes at all. I mean, I'm just dying. And literally, it didn't matter what I ate, I get sick from it. Drinking water still, even water would invoke a weird reaction inside my system. And so I literally thought my body was shutting down. I was scared I was dying. And I went to the ER in Sedona, and they're like, hey, something was wrong with something in their ER. They're like, we can take care of you here, but we have to send the test down to Cottonwood, or you can just drive down to Cottonwood if you want, and you can get the test done right there, and you're good to go. I was like, I'll just go to Cottonwood then. And so I drove down to Cottonwood, and I went in there, and like they're like, so tell us what's going on. I was like, I think I have a parasite. I was like, I went into these doctors up in Colorado. They missed it. They told me that they did all these tests for infections and everything. Come to find out, after I got my lab results back after bugging them for the result, they didn't ever test me for parasites. They didn't test me for Giardia. I was like, they just test for an infection such as like H. pylori or something like that. They're like, okay, well, we want to do these Giardia tests on you and also other tests for parasites because we think that's what you have. They're like, everything else on you looks okay. They're like except for that, and you're extremely iron deficient. And so I got the test done within 3 days. We had the results. They told me, they're like, you have one of the worst cases of Giardia we've ever seen. They apparently count the Giardia in the stool sample, and however many, however dense it is with the Giardia is how they can determine how bad your symptoms or how bad your infection is. They told me, they're like, you have the worst case we've seen in a long time. And they're like, we're here in Arizona where we see this stuff all the time. Because all the rocks that hold water in Arizona, like after it rains, it'll hold water for a long time, Giardias and all that stuff. So just heads up for your dogs and stuff, and also for you if you're going to drink water out of those little things. I took 4 rounds of the medication. Usually it takes 1 to knock it out. I took 4 to make sure that it was all taken care of, and so that started to feel better, which was good. And then the nightmare began, because I thought it was bad just having the Giardia, but what happens is the Giardia goes in and it messes with your system so bad that you have what appears to be autoimmune diseases afterwards, and they linger for years. And so I was told that this could linger for up to 5 to 6 years. And I mean, I'm a year and a half in. I have seen a marked improvement within the past like 2 weeks, like literally. I haven't told anybody, but I usually would spend most days laying down. When my intestines swell, which is what I am experiencing on a daily basis going forward from the Giardia infection, just the lingering after effect. When they swell up, it makes it to where I can't really move left to right, like move my torso around, so it's kind of hard to get around. And also too, your intestines, when they do it, they push up against the back of your pelvis, and then they will push up against your spine, and when those bones dig in, it doesn't feel very good. And so it's really uncomfortable to try and move around during that time. So even though I experienced all this stuff, I stayed out, full-time truck camping, and also full-time winter camping, out doing this full-time, even with these ailments. And I thought I can work through it. And in hindsight, I think that was kind of foolish. My theory was that you know, with YouTube and everything, and with the videos, is like, I'll just stay out here the longest. I'll just keep going. And I was like, I'm kind of dealing with some hard stuff health-wise. I didn't realize how hard I had been knocked down. And you know, if anybody out there is experiencing any sort of issues with, or you think you might have a parasite, like, go get it taken care of immediately. Like, don't mess around. And I think in my case, I thought, well, you know, I can kind of handle this through some organic diets or some holistic stuff, or, you know, maybe it's not a parasite. Maybe I'm just having a weird food allergy these days, or something like that. It was a parasite the entire time. And it's, you know, I can tell you, laying in bed in the middle of the night, like, with your intestines so swollen that you can't pass food, so you essentially have a blockage. You talk about getting sick. I mean, you don't know sick until you have a blockage. Like, you are sick. You feel absolutely horrible. Your skin's crawling. You've got the worst stomach pain on the planet. You've got, like, you know, pressure like crazy all throughout your system, and it's the worst. Another thing that happened is that it took me a long time for my intestines to grow back. So there are these things called Willy, or Villi, I don't know the correct pronunciation. I can't remember what my doctor called it. But they're basically the little fingers that stick up in your intestines that absorb food. And what happens is over time, the Giardia just comes through and it just shaves those off. And then after a while, the Giardia can burrow inside the wall and actually get embedded in your intestinal wall. Luckily, I didn't have that. They said that I was just on the cusp, they think, of it going in there because the villi were cut down so far. To grow that back, on a normal, healthy male that's like 21 years old, it takes about 6 months. For someone my age, I'll be 47 next month, it takes about a year and a half. And so I'm a year and a half past when I got rid of the Giardia, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to feel a marked improvement. So I think that's where we're at. So you know, I can absorb food a little bit better. I still have a ton of food that I cannot eat. Any sort of like sugars really set it off. Any sort of processed food that's like ultra processed, I have to watch out for any backpacking meals. Ones that aren't organic or made naturally, and ones that have a lot of stuff like chemicals in them, stuff like that, it just totally kills me. Any sort of sodas or carbonated beverages, can't drink those. I have to watch it with bread. I can do this one bread that my buddy bakes, and he makes it down the road. It's just honey oat bread, which is really good. And then I can also do a sourdough bread, but the rest of the breads I can't really do. As far as like cheese, you can only do like really high-end sharp cheddar cheese or extra sharp cheddar. I can do a little bit of that, not very much. Stuff like green beans, I can have up to 15 little green beans at a time. Anything more than that will set me off. And so it's really been an adjustment, you know, especially when I was living in the truck, having just such a small fridge to store food. I couldn't store a lot of different things, and so I was just trying to get by on like hummus, you know, and vegetables. And I can do eggs, not a lot, but I can do some. You can do like tuna, you know, fish, pork. You know, surprisingly, you can do bacon, so that's like a godsend. But that's about the only thing that's a godsend during this time. But you know, I am getting to the point to where I am introducing more foods into my diet, and it's starting to normalize. I've started working out again, which is really nice, and so I'm already starting to feel more like, you know, fit and sturdy. That was one thing that really bothered me for a while. I just couldn't work out at all. I just didn't, that my body had too much inflammation. Not only was it through my GI tract, but all of my joints and everything hurt. And so it just made it to the point to where it was just extremely difficult to deal with. But now I'm feeling better, and I'm really excited because, you know, part of the reason for me being so adamant about building that hot tub is that my doctors told me, like, hey, you know, that will help you recover. It's like anything to make your body, your inflammation go down, do it, and you're going to notice that you're just going to be on your feet that much quicker. And so it's helped out a tremendous amount. I'm pretty much in that thing twice a day, once in the morning, one at night, and it's probably the best therapy, you know, that other than just getting my food dialed in. That's like the best therapy that I've had so far. So I'm going to continue on with this. I'm certainly not over the hill yet, but I'm headed in the right direction. And I haven't weighed myself recently, but I'm going to start with this new workout program I'm doing. So it's a program from bodybuilding.com. It's a dumb name. It's called Get Swole, but it's an effective program. I've done it before, and when I did it in the past, I gained like almost 20 pounds in the first 4 months of just like muscle mass and all that stuff. So I'm excited to like not look like a weakling anymore, you know, and get back on track with stuff. So, because, you know, back when I was 120 pounds, I mean, I think back to like what I looked like. I mean, it was just harrowing. So anyway, I'm glad to be past that stuff. Thank you everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comment section below, and have a good day.